Sit. The fire will hold a while yet, and these are not short roads. I am the wanderer. I walked all 13, and what I carry back I carry in stories, before they leave me. 5 tonight. A kitchen on the iron road that fed children to the thing beneath it. A ledger that holds your name on a page you will never find again. A man who sat down for an hour and stood up old, his children already in the ground. A husband who walked the bone road to bring his wife back and turned to look. And 9 stones that sing in your own voice until you sit down and do not get up. We begin beneath the iron road. 13 roads. Here is a tale I have not yet forgotten. Listen. Tonight it is 2 children sent away from a starving harbour and a stone wayhouse on the iron road that fed them for 3 nights without ever showing its face. The boy is in his 30s now. I have eaten across a table from him. He cannot eat anything cooked by another person without flinching, and he has never told me why. He told me everything else. The iron road is one of the 13. It runs north out of a harbour town called Pell's Reach, up through stone country and into the high passes, and the people who live along it say it is a road that wants things. What it wants varies. Some years it wants soldiers. Some years it wants horses. The year I'm telling you about, it was a hungry year all up and down the coast, and the road wanted children, and the harbour was happy to send them. The brother's name was Pheolan. He was 11. The sister was Bryn. She was 9. Their father was a net mender. Their mother had been a fishwife who could split a herring with her thumb. The mother had died in the second winter of the hunger, of nothing in particular, the way poor women die when there has not been food for long enough. The father had remarried a woman from inland who did not love the children and who did not pretend to. By the 3rd winter, the inland woman had begun saying every night at the table that there were too many mouths in the house. By the 4th winter, the father had stopped arguing with her. He did not send them out himself. He paid a carter to do it. The carter was a man called Owl because of his eyes. Owl took the children up the iron road in the back of an empty cart, 3 days inland, and on the 3rd evening he told them to get down and walk back the way they had come. He gave them each a heel of bread. He gave the brother a tin cup. He told them, with what tenderness he had, and Owl had a little, that the road would feed them or it would not, and that he was sorry, and that he would tell their father he had taken them all the way to the city, which was a kindness, because their father had only paid him to go 3 days. He turned the cart around. The children watched him until the cart was a small thing, and then a smaller thing, and then nothing. Bryn had thought of the marker before they left. She had thought of breadcrumbs, the way a child does, and her brother had told her no, the gulls would have them in an hour, and besides, they had no bread to spare. She had thought of stones, and her brother had said stones were too heavy to carry that far, and you could not see 1 stone among the stones of the road. What she settled on was iron filings. Their father's shed had a barrel of them, swept up from the year he had tried to be a smith and given up. They were fine and dark and heavy in the hand. Bryn had filled a pouch with them the night before, and she had told her brother her plan, which was this. Every 50 paces she would let a pinch of filings fall behind her. The filings would lie black against the pale dust of the road. The wind would not take them. The rain would not take them. They would walk and they would mark. And when the carter abandoned them, they had both known he would, neither child had been stupid enough to believe the city, they would walk back along their own line of black grit and find Pell's Reach again. And maybe their father would be sorry, and maybe the inland woman would not be there anymore. And maybe... She let the filings fall the whole 3 days in the cart. She felt every pinch. She did not let her brother see her crying. When Owl turned around and the cart got small, Bryn took her brother's hand and they walked back toward where the filings should have been. There were no filings. The road had taken them. Not the wind, not the rain, the road. The iron road runs over stone in that country. Long, pale slabs of stone laid down by no one anyone remembers. And the slabs were bare. There was dust on them. There were the tracks of Owl's cart. There was the children's own footprints from where they had just walked. There were no filings, not at 50 paces, not at 100. Not at the place Bryn was sure she had let a whole handful go because her hand had been cramping. She sat down in the road, and she put her hand flat on the stone, and she could feel the filings under her palm. She could feel them through the stone, as if the road had drunk them down and was holding them just under the skin. She did not tell her brother that. She told him she had miscounted. She told him they would go on and they would find the next inn and they would beg. He believed her, because he was 11 and she was his sister, and that is how it works at 11. They walked for 2 more days. There was no inn. There were no carts. The iron road in that country runs through long, empty stretches where no one lives, because the people who used to live there left, and the people who came after them did not stay. The children drank from a stream the first night. The second night, there was no stream. By the third evening, Faulan was carrying his sister because she had stopped being able to feel her feet, and he was crying without sound, the way an 11-year-old cries when he has decided he is the man now. That was when he saw the Way House. It stood off the road, 50 paces into a stand of black pines, and it was made of stone, fitted stone, mortared tight, with a slate roof and a single iron door and a single iron-shuttered window. There was a chimney. There was smoke coming from the chimney. There was a lantern lit, hanging from a hook over the door. Faulan put his sister down. He walked up to the door. He knocked. No one answered. He knocked again. He called out. He said, "Please." He said his name and his sister's name, and he said they were children and they were hungry and please. No one answered. He tried the handle. The handle turned. The door opened. Inside there was a fire. Inside there was a long table. On the table there were 2 bowls of stew, steaming, and a loaf of dark bread, and a pitcher of milk, and 2 wooden spoons set neat beside the bowls. The bread was still warm. He could smell it from the door. There were 2 beds against the far wall. The beds were made up. The blankets were turned down. There were 2 small nightshirts laid folded on the pillows. There was no one in the Way House. Faulan stood in the door for a long time. He went out. He went around the building. He looked for a stable, a privy, a woodshed, anywhere a warden might be. There was nothing. There was only the Way House, alone among the pines, with smoke in its chimney and food on its table, and beds turned down for 2 children. He went back to his sister. He carried her in. He sat her at the table. He put a spoon in her hand. She ate. He ate. The stew was the best thing either of them had ever tasted, and they had both grown up on a coast where the fish were fresh, and they would have told you before that night that there was no food better than fish pulled out of the harbor at dawn. This was better. They ate until they could not eat. They drank the milk. They put on the nightshirts, which fit. They got into the beds, which were warm. Faulan, before he slept, went to the door, and he looked out into the pines, and he said into the dark, "Thank you. Thank you, whoever you are." No one answered. In the morning the bowls were gone. The bread was gone. The pitcher was gone. The table had been wiped. There were 2 new bowls. There was new bread. There was a pitcher of water with a slice of lemon in it. The fire was built up. The nightshirts they had taken off and folded were no longer on the pillows. Their own clothes, washed, were folded in their place. They had heard nothing in the night. Nothing. Faulan asked his sister if she had heard anyone. She said no. He asked her if she had slept all the way through. She said yes. He said he had too. They ate. They went outside. They walked the perimeter again. They called out, both of them this time, into the pines. "Hello? Hello? Thank you. We are the children. We are here." No one. The second night was the same. The food was on the table at dusk, hot, fresh. The beds were turned down. The nightshirts were laid out, but smaller than the first nights, because the first nights had been a little big, and these fit them perfectly. That was when Bryn started being afraid. She did not say so. She ate. She slept. But in the morning, when the bowls had been cleared and the new bread was warm and their clothes were folded again, she told her brother she wanted to leave. She said the road had eaten her filings and the wayhouse was feeding them, and she did not want to be fed anymore. He told her one more night. He told her they were not strong enough to walk. He told her, and this is the part he told me, in his 30s, with his hand shaking on his cup. He told her that whoever was feeding them must be kind, because kind was what the food tasted like. She agreed to one more night. She agreed on a condition. They would not sleep. They lay in the beds with their eyes open. They had agreed to take turns, but neither of them slept. The fire burned low. The lantern outside the door creaked once on its hook. The pines made the sound pines make. It was after midnight when the floorboard moved. Not a board breaking, a board lifting. Lifting from underneath, just by the table where they had eaten. A long, pale crack opened along the seam of 2 boards, and through that crack came a hand. The hand was thin. The hand was the color of something that had never seen the sun. The hand was longer than a hand should be. The fingers were the length of a man's forearm, and the wrist that came up after them kept coming, and the arm that came up after the wrist kept coming. And by the time the arm had reached up to the table and set a fresh bowl down where the old one had been, the elbow was still under the floor. Bryn put her hand over her brother's mouth. Another board lifted. Another hand came up. This one took the empty bowl and drew it down, slow, into the dark beneath the boards. A third hand laid out the bread. A fourth filled the pitcher. There were more hands than there should have been arms. There were more arms than could have fit beneath the wayhouse. The hands worked silently, neatly, the way a good servant works at a table where the master is asleep. They did not knock. They did not hurry. They set out the breakfast for 2 children, and they took the supper away, and one by one the boards lowered and the seams closed, and the room was as it had been. The children did not move until dawn. When the grey came in through the iron shutter, Bryn got up. She did not look at her brother. She went to the table. She lifted the board the first hand had come through. Underneath the wayhouse, in a hollow as deep as a cellar, were the bones of children, stacked, sorted. The long bones in one heap, the small bones in another, the skulls in a third. There were dozens. There were more than dozens. The bones were clean. They had been cleaned by something patient. The wayhouse had been fattening them. Faulan went to pieces. He sat on the floor, and he made a sound that was not crying and was not screaming. And Bryn, who was 9 and small, and the one who had thought of the filings, knelt down next to him and took his face in her hands and told him to listen. She told him she had a plan. She had been thinking, she said, about the road, about the filings, about what the road did with what it was given. The road had taken her filings. The road took soldiers. The road took horses. The road took. That was what the road did. And the Wayhouse was the road's child, or the road's servant, or the road's mouth. And a mouth had to be fed, and what fed mouths was meat. The road had been feeding the Wayhouse. The Wayhouse had been fattening the children. The children had been fed to the road. She said, the Wayhouse has to be fed in turn. She said, I am going to feed it. Here is what she did. She told her brother to take the bread and the cheese from that morning's breakfast, and his clothes, and the tin cup the carter had given him, and to walk out the iron door and stand at the edge of the pines and not look back. She told him she was going to draw the hands up into the room. She told him she was going to lead them out the door. She told him the road would do the rest, and that he should run when he heard the road do it. He asked her how she knew the road would do it. She said, because the road is hungry too. He did what she said. He stood at the edge of the pines with his back to the Wayhouse. He could hear her behind him. He could hear her speaking to the floor, coaxing it, the way you coax a dog out from under a porch. Come up, she was saying. Come up and see. There is more. There is a whole one for you. Come up. He heard the boards lift. He heard them lift more than they had lifted in the night. He heard the hands come up and up and up. And then he heard a sound he has never been able to describe to me, a sound that was the Wayhouse unfolding, the way a thing unfolds when it has been pretending to be small. He heard his sister say, very calmly, this way. He heard her footsteps on the iron threshold. He heard the thing follow her, many feet, too many. She walked it out into the road. She walked it past the pines and onto the pale stone slabs, and she stood in the middle of the road, and she said, he heard this clearly, she pitched her voice for him to hear. She said, here, take it. I brought it for you. The road took it. He did not see how. He was not looking. He had his hands over his ears and his face pressed against the bark of a black pine, and he was 11, and his sister had told him not to look. He heard the slabs of stone make a sound he had heard once before, when she had put her hand flat on the road and felt the filings being drunk down. It was that sound, magnified, the sound of the road swallowing. When it stopped, he turned around. The Wayhouse was gone. Not collapsed, gone. The pines stood in a ring around an empty patch of ground, and the lantern hook was on the ground, and the iron door was on the ground, and there was no chimney, and no roof, and no walls, and no table, and no beds. There were no bones. The cellar was filled in with roadstone, smooth, as though it had never been opened. His sister was not on the road. The road was bare. The slabs were pale. There was no mark on them. There was nothing to suggest that a child had stood there a moment before and said, here, and offered. He walked south. He walked for 9 days. He drank from streams. He ate the bread and the cheese until they were gone, and then he ate nothing. And then he ate roots, and then he came down out of the stone country into a town that was not Pell's Reach, but was near enough. And a woman who sold cabbages took one look at him and brought him into her kitchen and put a bowl in front of him. He could not eat it. He tried. He sat with the spoon in his hand, and he looked at the bowl, and he could not put the spoon in. The woman did not press him. She gave him bread instead. He ate the bread because she had not cooked it. A baker had, and somehow that was different. Somehow bread from a baker was bread from many hands, and many hands meant not one mouth waiting under the floor. He has lived all his life that way. He eats bread from bakers. He eats fruit from trees. He eats fish he has caught and cooked himself, over a fire he has built himself, in a pan he has scrubbed himself. Anything cooked for him by another person, in another person's house, on another person's hearth, he flinches. He cannot help it. His hand will not lift the spoon. He told me, the night I sat across from him, that he is not afraid the food is poisoned. He knows it is not. He is afraid of the kindness of it. He is afraid of what a kindness might be paying for. I have walked that stretch of the iron road. I have looked for the patch of ground in the ring of black pines. I have not found it. The pines all look alike, and the road forgets the places it has eaten. I asked him, before I left him, whether he ever dreamed of his sister. He said, "I dream of her every night. She is always 9. She is always standing in the road. She always turns to me, and she says the same thing, and I cannot ever, in the morning, remember what it is." I asked him if he thought she was alive somewhere. He said, "I think she is part of the road now. I think she is what it has instead of filings. This is what I have come to think. I think the way house was a mouth, and the road was the stomach, and the children were the meal." And Bryn understood, the way a hungry child understands hunger, that a mouth and a stomach are not the same thing. A mouth can be fed once and emptied. A stomach is forever. She fed the mouth to the stomach. She broke the way house by giving it what it had been hiding from. And the road, having swallowed its own mouth, had to take her too, because she had stood on it and offered, and the road takes what is offered. Her brother walked out alive because she had paid for the walking. There were dozens of children's bones under that floor. I counted them in my head, from his telling, the way he had counted them at 9 years old in the grey dawn. Dozens. Going back, by the look of them, longer than any warden would remember. He is the only one who walked out. He is the only one because his sister was 9, and she had thought of the filings, and she had felt them drunk down through stone, and she had understood the road sooner than any soldier ever has. I am telling you what I saw and what he told me before I forget. If you walk the iron road and you come to a way house that has no warden, and the door opens and the food is on the table, eat if you must, sleep if you must. But on the third night, lie awake, watch the floor. If a board lifts, do not scream, do not run. Screaming wakes the rest of the hands, running puts you on the road, and the road is the worse mouth. Wait until morning, and then, if you have a sister with you, listen to her. She will know before you do. 13 Roads. Here is a tale I have not yet forgotten. Listen. Tonight it is Devan Ashcroft, a man who found his own name written in a book he had never touched, on a road he had survived, in ink that was still wet. He found it on the 43rd page. He counted. He was the kind of man who counted things, who kept tallies in the margins of his receipts, who once catalogued every stone in a boundary wall just to know how many there were. The kind of man who believes that knowing the number of a thing is the same as understanding it. He was wrong about that. Most people who find the ledger are wrong about that. Here is what the book did to him. It let him read his own name, and then it took the page away, and for the rest of his life, 9 years, 2 months, 11 days, he counted those too. He could not shake the certainty that something on the bone road had finished reading him. He was not the first. He will not be the last. And I know this because I have read my own name in that book as well. That last part I will come back to. Devan Ashcroft came to the bone road the way most people come to it, through a door that was not supposed to be there. His was set into the back wall of a mill house in the river district of Call, behind a rack of drying nets that smelled of old scales and brine. The door had no handle. It opened when he leaned against it, which he did because he was tired, and the wall looked solid, and he did not expect it to give. That is how most of the doors on these roads work. They are calibrated for the moment a person stops being cautious. He was 31. He had walked half the night through wet streets, looking for a man named Ordwick Fenn, who owed him 11 years of wages. And he had not found him, and the anger in his chest had curdled into something quieter and harder, the way anger does when it has nowhere to go. He stepped through the door. The brine smell cut off as if a hand had been pressed over it. The air on the other side was cold and dry and tasted faintly of chalk. The Bone Road does not look like what you would imagine from the name. There is no scatter of remains, no architecture of skulls. The name comes from the stone itself, a pale, yellowish limestone that runs the full length of the road in wide, flat slabs, each one worn smooth by centuries of feet. And when the light catches those slabs at the right angle, they do look, in a way that is difficult to explain to someone who has not seen it, like the cross-sections of very large bones, cortical rings, growth lines. The road feels like walking across something that was once alive and has been lying still for a very long time. The marker is at the midpoint. Every road has a center, a place where whatever the road is becomes most itself. On the Bone Road, the center is marked by a single stone pillar, chest high, about the width of a man's shoulders, with no inscription on any face. Nothing carved, nothing painted, just stone. And at the base of the pillar, in a shallow depression in the ground that might have been made by water, or by hands, or by repetition of the same weight placed in the same spot over a very long time, there is a book. It is not chained. It is not locked. It is not even, by any observable mechanism, protected. It sits in that shallow depression, and it is, when you find it for the first time, very obviously the most important object you have ever been in the same physical space with. That is not a metaphor. The feeling is physical. A pressure behind the sternum, a narrowing of peripheral vision, the specific quality of attention your body produces when it has identified something as significant before your mind has caught up. Prey attention, the kind that sharpens your hearing. Devan found the marker roughly 2 hours into the road. He had not meant to walk 2 hours. He had meant to look at whatever was on the other side of the door and then walk back through it, because the door was still visible as a pale rectangle of dim light behind him, and he was the kind of man who always kept his exits. But exits on the Bone Road are one of the things that do not behave the way exits should. The door stayed visible. The distance to it did not change. He walked toward it for 20 minutes, and it remained exactly as far away as it had been. So he turned around and walked the other direction, the way you try the other end of a corridor when one end fails. And the marker was there, and the book was there, and he stopped. He stood over it for some time before he touched it. The book is large, the size of a ledger, which is in fact what people who have found it tend to call it, the ledger, though no one has agreed on where that name came from, or whether the object itself has a name at all. The cover is a dark material that is almost certainly leather, and from which most people reflexively pull their fingers after a few seconds, though they cannot say why. The pages are thick, cream-colored, the edges uneven in the way of paper that was made by hand. The ink is dark brown, nearly black, and the names are written in a script that is consistent, the same hand throughout, or something that maintains the discipline of one hand. But the language shifts. Latin runs into something older, kanji beside what appears to be cuneiform, names in alphabets that do not correspond to anything in the historical record. And every name is a person who has walked the road. That much had been established, or rather, had been assembled, piece by piece, from the accounts of people who found the book and compared notes in the way survivors of strange things sometimes find each other. There are more of those accounts than you might expect. The Bone Road is not the most traveled of the roads, but it is not the least. And the marker is not hidden. People find it. People open the book, and a significant proportion of them, searching through the pages, find their own name. Not everyone finds their name. That is important. Roughly 1 in 3, based on what accounts exist, find nothing. They search the book, and it contains no record of them. Those people report a variety of reactions, most of which cluster around a specific flavor of relief that is not entirely comfortable to feel, because the relief implies a stakes they had not consciously registered until the danger passed. And some of those people have later said that the absence of their name was almost worse, that not being in the book felt less like being spared and more like being overlooked. The ones who find their name, and Davan was one, find it always on a page that does not seem, when approached from either direction, to be findable by increments. You do not reach page 43 by counting through 42 before it. The page is simply there, and then your name is on it. And around your name are other names in other languages, a full page of them, and yours is midway down the left column, and the ink appears to be wet. Davan touched it. He pressed the tip of his index finger to the bottom loop of the last letter of his surname and pulled away, and there was a dark smear on his fingertip. And he stood there in the cold, chalk-scented air with his own name on his skin and something happening in his chest that he would later describe to 3 different people as the feeling of being read. Not observed, not watched. Read. The way a page is read, from left to right, taken in, processed, the meaning extracted and the paper left behind with its words still on it, but somehow emptier than before. He looked up from the book. The road was empty in both directions. The pale stone slabs ran away from him into a distance that seemed to extend further than the physical space should have allowed, because the bone road at its center has that quality, a depth that does not match its width, a sense of corridor becoming plain, of local becoming very, very large. Nothing was visible, but the feeling did not go. He looked back at the page. He read the names around his own, 19 above, 11 below, 31 names on the left column, 28 on the right, 59 names on that page, including his, and he counted them because he was Davan Ashcroft, and that was what he did. And then he looked for page markers, for any indication of the book's total length, and found none. He tried to count the pages. The book was too thick. His fingers found no natural stopping point, as if the pages continued in a way that did not correspond to the physical dimensions of the spine. He closed it. He put it back in the depression at the base of the pillar. He turned, and the door was immediately visible and immediately reachable, and he walked through it in 4 minutes, which told him something about the road that he spent a long time afterward trying not to think about. He told no one for 6 weeks. Then he told his landlady, a woman named Sarah Vaughan, who had a reputation for neither gossiping nor dismissing. And she listened to the whole of it without expression, and then asked him, had he gone back to check? He had not. He went back 11 days later. The door in the millhouse wall opened the same way, leaning, tired, not expecting it to give. The road was identical. The marker was there. He found the book, opened it, and searched for the 43rd page. There was no 43rd page. Not in the sense of the page being torn out, in the sense that the book, examined from either end, contained no such page. The pages were numbered. He could see now that they were numbered, fine, pale numerals at the upper corner, and they ran 1 through 42, and then 44, and the page between them was simply absent, without gap, without residue, the way you expect a removed page to leave a ragged edge or a ghost of adhesive. But this left nothing, as if it had never been bound there at all. He searched for his name on page 44, on 45, on every page he could reach. He could not find it. He went back 17 more times over the next 8 years. He never found his name again. He found on one occasion a page where the ink appeared wet, and the names on it were in a hand he did not recognize and a language he could not read, and he did not touch the ink that time. and he was never certain whether that restraint had been wisdom or cowardice. He told 4 more people about the book across those years: a rope merchant in Corl, a woman who studied old contracts for evidence of forgery, a young man who had walked the road himself and described finding the marker and feeling the pressure, but never opening the book, and one other person, whose name and occupation I am choosing not to share, because that person is still alive and has asked me not to. None of the people he told could tell him what the book was for. Which is the question that followed Davin Ashcroft from the mill house to his death at 40 years old. Not from anything on the road. He died of a fever, an ordinary fever with an ordinary arc, which, in its own way, is part of why his story stays with me. He did not die of the road. He died with the road unfinished in him, the question still open, the page still missing. The question is this: the names in the book are not just recorded, they are read by something. The wet ink is not residual, it is recent, and it is recent because the writing is being done continuously, and whatever is writing the names is not writing them as an archive. An archive is passive. An archive does not need the ink wet. The ink is wet because the writing is part of a process that is still underway, and the process is not record keeping. It is closer to what a predator does when it marks something it intends to return to. And the page disappears, not because the information on it is gone, but because the reader, the thing that reads those pages in the night, the thing that extracted something from Davin Ashcroft when he touched his own name and felt himself being turned over and understood, that reader does not need the page anymore. It has what it came for. The page was not evidence. It was bait. Now, my own name. I found it on a road I will not name tonight, at a marker I will not describe precisely, on a page I held open for longer than I should have. I know the number of that page. I have gone back, as Davin went back, and found the number missing from the sequence, and felt the nothing where the page used to be. I did not touch the ink. I want to believe that matters. I want to believe that whatever Davin received in his chest when he pressed his finger to the bottom loop of his surname, that reading feeling, that being processed feeling, I want to believe it requires contact, that not touching is protection. Some nights I believe it. On those nights I sleep without interruption. On the other nights I lie in the dark and I think about the fact that I opened the book. I held the page. My eyes moved across my own name. And whatever reads those pages in the night between one visit and the next does not, as far as anyone has established, require the reader to touch the ink. It may only require the reader to have read. I have told you what I know about the ledger under the central marker of the Bone Road. I have told you about Davin Ashcroft, who was thorough and precise, and who took 9 years to die of a thing with nothing to do with any of this, and who never found his page again. I have told you that the book rearranges in the night. I have told you that something reads it. What I have not told you, because I do not know, and because I suspect that not knowing is the only honest position left to me, is whether being in the book is the same as being chosen, or whether it is the same as being scheduled. There is a road I have walked only once. The traveler I met on it carried something in a locked box and would not say what was in the box, but he said the box was addressed, and that the name on the address was one he had found in a book at a stone pillar, and that he was not delivering it of his own will. He said the road had him going in a direction he had not chosen, and he could not make it take him anywhere else. I watched him walk away. I have been thinking about that box for a long time. The next time I find a road I have not walked before, I will walk it, because not walking it has not made me less certain that something has my name on a page. It has only made me more certain that I have not yet seen what the page is for. Come back. There are travelers I have not yet told you about, and at least one of them found something in a locked box on a road with no exits that I think you need to hear before you walk anywhere unfamiliar. 13 roads. Here is a tale I have not yet forgotten. Listen. Tonight it is Aldrich Voss who sat down on the Bone Road for what he believed was an hour and stood up a stranger in his own children's eyes. He was not the first. He will not be the last. 3 men I have known personally sat down on that road and rose decades older, and not one of them understood what had been taken from them, or why. The road does not steal time the way a thief steals silver, quick and gone before you notice the weight missing from your purse. It takes time the way a creditor takes a house, legally, with witnesses, according to terms you agreed to, even if you never read them. That is the doctrine I'm here to give you tonight. Not the story of what happened to Aldrich Voss, though I will tell you that in full, because you need the example in front of you when the theory lands. But the doctrine, what the bone riders are actually paid, what the currency is, and why every single traveler who has ever walked that road and survived has been, in some precise and terrible sense, robbed blind and thanked the rider for it. Pay attention. This is not a ghost story. This is a ledger. Aldrich Voss put his left boot on the first pale stone of the Bone Road on a morning in late autumn when the road fog was low enough to wet your knees. He was 31 years old. He had 2 daughters, Marit, 7, and Solin, 4. He had a wife named Dusa, who had kissed the back of his hand at the threshold and told him the road owed him nothing, and he should remember that. He had, in the heel of his right boot, a piece of folded oilskin paper, and inside it a tooth, not his own. His daughter Marit's first lost tooth, which she had pressed into his palm the night before he left, because she had heard somewhere that the road required proof of who you were going home to. Children understand the road better than their fathers do. They always have. He made good time for the first 2 days. The Bone Road does nothing dramatic in the early hours. That is one of the things I want you to understand. It earns your trust first. The stones are pale grey, almost white, and they sit flush in the earth so that your feet find them naturally, as if the road wants to be walked. The fog moves like a slow river beside you rather than through you. Birds call from somewhere you cannot see. It is, for a day, perhaps 2, genuinely pleasant walking. Then the road gives you a gift. A flat stone, smooth, warm to the touch even in autumn air, the way a stone left in afternoon sun holds heat past dark. Wide enough to sit on comfortably, appearing at a moment when your legs are genuinely tired and the next settlement is still hours away. Travelers call it the rest. I have heard it called other things, the courtesy, the invitation, the kindness. But those are names for the same flat stone, or the same kind of stone, that appears on the Bone Road at the precise moment you need it most. Aldrich sat down. He set his pack between his feet, stretched his back, and listened to the fog. He was not afraid. He had been warned the road was strange, but the people who had warned him were people who had never walked it, and their warnings had the shape of warnings that come from people who have never walked it, full of imprecision, rich in dread, empty of detail. He had discounted them. This is common. He sat for what he experienced as an hour. He knew it was an hour because he was a man who had worked the same tannery shifts for 9 years, and his sense of an hour was accurate to within minutes. He watched the fog. He thought about Marit's tooth in his boot. He thought about Dusa's hands. He thought about the errand that had sent him onto the road in the first place. A debt collection from a cousin in the next valley, 40 silver marks that his family needed before the first winter market. He did the arithmetic of how he would spend the 40 marks. He rehearsed the argument he would make to the cousin if the cousin resisted. He was, in every way, a man using an hour productively while resting his feet. Then he stood up. His knees ached in a way they had not ached when he sat down. He noticed that and filed it as stiffness from the cold. He noticed his pack felt heavier. He filed that too. He noticed the light had the wrong quality. Not wrong by an hour, but wrong by months. The low, flat light of deep winter rather than late autumn. He told himself the fog was distorting it. He walked. He reached the cousin's valley in 3 days. The cousin was dead. Not recently dead, dead for 11 years. The cousin's daughter, who was a grown woman with a husband and 2 sons, looked at Aldrich Voss as if he were an apparition. She asked him twice who he was, and when he told her, she sat down on her own doorstep and put her face in her hands. She said, "Your daughters buried you 7 years ago." She said, "Marette is 18 now, and Solin is 15, and they buried an empty box because there was no body to bury. But they had to bury something because your wife Dusa died of grief in the 2nd year, and the girls needed somewhere to put it." Aldrich Voss stood in the door of the cousin's daughter's house, with his pack on his back and a 40 silver mark debt in his head that was 11 years old, and a tooth in his boot from a 7-year-old girl who was now 18. And he understood, or began to understand, what the flat, warm stone on the Bone Road had cost him. Now, here is where I stop being Aldrich Voss and start being the man who has studied this. Because the obvious question, the question everyone asks when I tell them Aldrich's story is, why? What does the road get from taking a man's 11 years? What does the road spend them on? And the obvious answer, the one most people settle for because it is satisfying and because it rhymes with every other piece of dark road lore they have ever heard, is that the road feeds on time, that it is hungry, that it consumes years the way fire consumes wood, for the heat of it, for the simple fact of consumption. That answer is wrong. I'm certain it is wrong, and I will tell you why. And the reason involves the faceless rider. The faceless rider does not look like what you are imagining. I have seen descriptions in 12 different accounts from 12 different travelers, and the physical details almost never match in their specifics. The horse is different sizes. The cloak is described as black, as grey, as a color that has no name. But in every account, one detail is identical. There is a face-shaped absence where the face should be. Not darkness, not a void, not a hood or a mask. An absence, the way a word you cannot remember is an absence in the middle of a sentence. You know the shape of the space. You know something was there, but the thing itself is withheld. Every traveler who has seen the rider describes the face absence before they describe anything else, even when they are trying to describe the horse or the cloak. The absence is the loudest thing about it. The rider is present on the Bone Road in every account where time is taken. Not always visible, not always close, but present, in the way a creditor is present in a transaction, not necessarily in the room, but the terms are theirs. Here is the doctrine. Here is what I believe, based on everything I have read and 2 conversations I have personally had with travelers who came off that road changed. The Bone Road does not take time. The faceless rider buys it. The distinction matters. It matters enormously, because a thief leaves you diminished and takes nothing back to a ledger. But a buyer gives you something in exchange. The question is only what. Every traveler who loses time on the Bone Road arrives at their destination safely. Every single one. The cousin's daughter who told Aldrich his daughters had buried him, she also told him that 3 other men had come down off that road the year before in the same condition, white-haired and blinking, and none of them had died on the road. None of them had been hurt on the road. All of them had completed whatever errand had put them on the road in the first place. The road had not harmed them. It had merely billed them. But billed them for what? What service? This is where it gets precise. I have a name for what the rider provides, and it is a specific name, not a poetic one. It is called uninterrupted passage. And I need you to understand what that means on the Bone Road specifically, because on any other road, the phrase is nearly meaningless. On the Bone Road, the phrase means survival. The bone road is not simply a road that warps time. The bone road is a road that is saturated, in the same way a cloth can be saturated with water, fully and completely saturated, with things that kill travelers. Not always visibly, not always dramatically, but the accounts I have studied show a base mortality rate for bone road travelers who do not sit on the flat, warm stone, who push through, who refuse the rest, who have been warned by someone who actually walked it. Those travelers die at a rate that no other road approaches. 19 out of every 23 in the records I have found reliable. 19 of 23 who refused the stone did not complete the road. They became the road, in a sense. The white bones that give it its name are not decorative. The rider is not stealing time. The rider is keeping a bargain that the flat stone offers and that every traveler who sits on it accepts. You give years. The rider keeps the 19 things that were waiting to kill you from doing so. Every predator that did not approach. Every illness that did not take hold in the cold and damp. Every stone that did not roll wrong beneath a foot. Every wrong turn that somehow became a right one. The rider holds all of that at bay for the length of your crossing, and the price is years. A portion of the years you are going to live anyway, extracted smoothly, without pain, without your awareness, while you sat on a warm stone and thought about 40 silver marks and your daughter's tooth. Aldrich Voss lost 11 years. In exchange, he walked out of one of the most lethal roads in the world alive and intact. That is not nothing. I want to be careful not to let the tragedy of what he lost eclipse the fact of what he received. His wife died in his absence. His daughters buried an empty box. These are real and grievous losses, but Aldrich Voss is also alive. He went to his daughters. Marit, 18, stood in the door of the house she had been keeping for 4 years with her 15-year-old sister, and she looked at the white-haired man with her father's eyes and her father's hands, and after a very long time, he told this to the man who told it to me, after a very long time, she stepped aside to let him in. He still had the tooth in his boot. Now, here is the thing about the doctrine that keeps me returning to it, the thing that I cannot settle. If the bone road takes years as payment, and if the faceless rider is the creditor, then the rider is accumulating something. 11 years from Aldrich Voss. Whatever was taken from the other 3 men who came through the year before. Every traveler who ever sat on a flat, warm stone and stood up changed. Centuries of human years, gathered and held somewhere, in something that has no face, on a road made of bones. What does something like that do with time? Not spend it. The rider does not age, does not appear to change between any 2 accounts separated by decades. Not consume it, does not appear to waste or discard it. The years are not returned to the road, not redistributed, not visible anywhere downstream. They are kept, stored, held the way a man who has survived great hunger will hoard bread even in a season of plenty, not because he needs it, but because the fear of needing it is now part of his architecture. I have one theory. I do not offer it with confidence. I offer it because it is the only shape that fits the available accounts. The faceless rider was, once, a traveler. Not a man, perhaps, or not only a man, but something that walked a road, sat on a stone, and paid. And what it paid was everything. Not 11 years, everything. Every year it had remaining. And it arrived, intact, as the bargain promises, but it arrived at a destination that no longer existed, or arrived as something that could no longer be recognized by the destination, or arrived so completely emptied of time that it had no name left, no face left, nothing left but the road and the flat, warm stone and the knowledge of the transaction. And so it continued the transaction, because it was the only thing left that it knew how to do. I am not certain of this. I am certain of the doctrine, that the rider buys, not steals, and that the road's mortality for those who do not pay is near total, and that uninterrupted passage is a real service delivered in full. Those 3 things I will stake my credibility on, The theory of what the rider is, I hold more loosely. What I do not hold loosely is this. If you are ever on a road made of white stones, and the fog is knee-high, and your legs are tired, and a flat, warm stone appears at exactly the right moment, do not sit down. The cost of completing that road without the bargain is severe. 19 in 23. I know what those odds mean, but the cost of the bargain is also real, and it is borne not only by you. Audric Voss paid 11 years, and Dusa paid with her life, and Marit paid with 4 years of raising her sister alone, and Solin paid with a mother and a father, both before she was old enough to lose either. The rider extracts from one man, and the debt is collected from everyone he was supposed to come home to. I have walked roads where the toll is at least honest, where you can see the booth and the keeper and the scale. The Bone Road's toll is honest in its own way. The contract is real. The service is delivered. It is only that you never see the scale, and you never see what it weighs, and you never know, sitting on that warm stone with your daughter's tooth in your boot, how many years you are about to hand to something with no face. Audric Voss died at 60, ordinary and intact, in the bed his daughters had kept for him. Marit put the tooth on his chest before they closed it. I have been on roads where the payments are made in different currencies: blood, memory, the ability to recognize a face you love. The next road I will tell you about takes nothing so measurable as time. What it takes is the kind of thing you do not notice is gone until the moment you need it most. And by then, you are already past the place where it was taken. The traveler on that road did not sit down. She made no bargain. She walked the whole road without stopping, and she came home in exactly the right amount of time, and she was exactly the right age, and she could not remember her children's name. 13 roads. Here is a tale I have not yet forgotten. Listen. Tonight it is a man with a chisel in his belt and a wife in the ground. His name was Halen. He was a stonemason in a town with 1 bridge and 3 wells. He walked the Bone Road for 9 days, and he came back on the 11th, and he was alone when he came back, and he had been alone the whole way. I will tell you what he was promised, and what he believed, and what the road did with the difference. Halen was 31 the spring his wife died. Her name was Mara. She had been a weaver before she married him, and a weaver after, and she sat by the south window of their house because the light there was the kind a weaver can trust, and she made the kind of cloth that is not famous in the city, but is paid for in the country, in coin pressed warm from a man's pocket. She was small. She had a chip in her front tooth from a fall she took at 6 and never had fixed because, she said, it was the only part of her face she could find with her tongue in the dark, and she liked knowing where she was. They had been married 8 years. They had no children. They had wanted them. They had stopped, in the 7th year, talking about it. She died on a Wednesday, in the afternoon, of a thing in her chest that had been a cough for a month, and then was not a cough anymore. The physician came. The physician was honest. The physician said there was a thing growing in her that no one could cut out because it had grown into the place where her breath was made. She lived 4 more days. On the 4th day, she was lucid for an hour in the morning, and she asked Halen for water, and she drank it, and she said his name once, and she said, "Halen, the south window." And he did not know what she meant. And he asked her to say it again, and she could not, because by then the thing in her chest was finished with her. He sat with her body until the next morning. He did not weep. He sat with his hand on her hand, and he tried to remember what she had meant about the south window, and he could not. And the not remembering was the first thing the road would later use against him. He buried her on the Friday. He did not eat for 2 days after the burial. On the third day, he ate a piece of bread standing at the south window of their house, looking at the light she had liked. And he understood that he could not stay in the house with the south window and the loom and the chip in her tooth that he could no longer find with his thumb in the dark. He went out into the yard, and he stood with his hands open at his sides for a long time, and he thought about which of the 13 roads a man walks when his wife is dead. There are 13 roads. Most of them you do not choose. Most of them choose you. The bone road is the one a man chooses, because it is the road where the dead are kept, and it is the only road on which a thing taken can be argued for back. It is colder than the others. It has no inns. The wardens of the other roads will not speak its name aloud at their fires. Halen had heard of it the way every man hears of it. He had not believed it was a road a real man walked. He took a wool cloak. He took a wineskin. He took the chisel from his belt and put it in his pack instead of leaving it on the bench, because his hands had held that chisel longer than they had held anything else, and he did not want to walk without it. He did not take food. The man at the gate of the town asked him where he was going, and he did not answer. And the man at the gate looked at his face and stepped aside, because the man at the gate had been a gatekeeper for 20 years, and he knew the look of a man who had chosen the bone road, and he knew you do not stop such a man, and he knew you do not ask twice. Halen walked out of the town on the Sunday morning. The bone road begins where the other roads end. You walk the lesser roads first. You walk them until they thin. The road under your feet gets paler. The trees beside it get fewer. The birds stop. There is a moment, and you do not see it coming, when you understand that you have been walking on the bone road for some time already, and that the road did not announce itself, and that you crossed onto it the way a man crosses into sleep, without a threshold, without a sound. The cold came up through the soles of his boots first, then through his shins. Then it sat in his hips like a thing that had been waiting for him. There were no inns. He had been told there would be none. He had not understood until the first night what that meant. It meant there were no fires that were not his fire. It meant there were no other men. It meant that when he stopped walking, the silence stopped too. Not the way silence stops in a quiet room, but the way a sound stops when the thing making it has been killed. He slept on the road itself, because there was no ground beside the road that he trusted. He woke in the dark twice. Both times he heard nothing. Both times the nothing was worse than a sound would have been. He walked for 4 days before he saw what he had come to see. At the end of the bone road, there is a place where the road does not go any further. It is not a gate. It is not a wall. It is a place where the road simply stops, the way a sentence stops with the next word missing. Halen stood at the end of the road for a long time before he understood that the figure he had been looking at was a figure and not a tree and not a stone. It was a man. It was him. It was him as he would be in 40 years. The same face, weathered, the same hands with the same scar on the left thumb where the chisel had slipped when he was 19. The same height, the same set of the shoulders which he had inherited from his father, who had inherited it from his. The older Halen was sitting on a stone at the end of the road. He looked up when Halen came near. He did not seem surprised. He had been waiting, and he had known what he was waiting for, and he had been waiting for a long time. He said, "You have come for her." Halen said, "Yes." The older Halen said, "You may have her. She will walk behind you out of the bone road. You will hear her footsteps. You must not look back. If you hear her stop walking, you must keep walking. Do you understand?" Halen said, "Yes." The older Halen looked at him for a long time. The older Halen said, "I will tell you again. Do you understand?" Halen said, "Yes." The older Halen nodded, the way a man nods when he has heard an answer he was hoping not to hear. And he stood up from the stone, and he walked past Halen up the road in the direction Halen had come from. And Halen did not turn to watch him go, because already the rule had begun. He turned, and he walked back the way he had come. He listened. For a long time there was nothing. Then, faint behind him, a footstep. Then another. They were her footsteps. He knew the weight of her step the way a man knows the breath of a wife he has slept beside for 8 years. The steps were tired. The steps were uneven, the way they had been the last month of her life, when the thing in her chest had made her favor her left side. The steps were Mara's. He did not look back. He walked. On the first day, the steps were faint, far behind him, like a sound heard through water. On the second day, they were closer, closer by half. He could hear now the small sound of her cloak against the road. On the third day, he could hear her breathing. On the fourth day, he could hear, between her steps, the small dragging sound of her left foot, the one that had favored her side at the end. He nearly turned then. He nearly turned because he wanted to see her favor that side and know it was her. He did not turn. He walked. On the fifth day, she was so close behind him that he could feel her breath, or thought he could, on the back of his neck. And he wept as he walked, because she was there, and he could not look at her, and that was the bargain, and he would keep it. On the sixth day, he heard her say his name. He did not turn. On the seventh day, she said his name again. She said, "Halen, the south window." The same words she had said on the morning she died. He did not understand them then, and he did not understand them now. And he wanted to turn and ask her, and he did not turn, because the older man on the stone had said, "Do not look back." And he had said yes, and he had meant it. On the eighth day she sang, very softly, a song she had sung at her loom. He had heard it 10,000 times. He walked through it. On the ninth day her steps were so close he could have reached his hand back and touched her wrist. He did not. On the 10th day, the footsteps stopped. He kept walking. He had been told to keep walking. He kept walking for an hour. The road ahead of him was the same pale road. The cold was the same cold. There were no birds. There had not been birds for 10 days. He kept walking. In the second hour, he began to think she had stumbled. She had favored her left side at the end, and the road was uneven, and she had been walking for 10 days, and she was tired. And what kind of man walks on while his wife lies on the road behind him? He told himself the rule. He told himself the rule again. He could not hear her breathing. He could not hear the cloak. He could not hear the dragging of her left foot. There was no sound behind him at all. He walked another hour. In the fourth hour, he understood that if she had collapsed, she might be dying again, on the road, alone, behind him, with no one to put a hand on her hand. And the thought of her dying that way, the second time, the way the first time had been, alone in a bed in a house, with him sitting in the next room because the physician had told him to let her rest. The thought of that was the thing he had walked the bone road to undo. He turned. She was not there. The road behind him was empty. It had been empty, he understood, for 10 days. There were no footprints. There was no cloak. There was no small chipped tooth that a man's thumb had once known in the dark. There had never been anyone behind him. He stood on the road for a long time. He was not weeping. The weeping had not started yet. The weeping would start later, when he understood what had happened, and the understanding would take a long time, because the road had told him the rule wrong on purpose, and a man does not understand a rule told wrong until he has walked back to ask. He walked back. The older Halen was on the stone. He looked up. He was not surprised. Halen said, "She stopped walking." I turned because I thought she had fallen. The older Helen said, "She did not stop walking. She was never walking. The footsteps were the road's. The road makes the sound of what you have lost, because the road knows that is the only sound that will keep you walking." Helen said, "You told me not to look back." The older Helen said, "I told you not to look back." The condition was not to look back. The condition was to not believe she was following. A man who does not believe she is following does not turn when the footsteps stop, because a man who does not believe she is following is not listening for the footsteps in the first place. Helen said, "Then she was never going to come." The older Helen said, "She was going to come on the day you walked the whole road without listening. No man has walked it that way. No man will. I know. I am you in 40 years. I have been sitting on this stone for 39 of them." Helen walked back up the bone road alone. It took him 11 days. He did not count. The cold came out of his hips on the 7th day, and out of his shins on the 9th, and out of the soles of his boots on the 11th, and by then he was at the gate of his town, and the gatekeeper looked at him and stepped aside again, because the gatekeeper had seen men come back from the bone road before, and there is a face such men have, and Helen had it. He did not go to the house with the south window. He sold the house. He sold the loom. He kept the chip-toothed comb she had used and the wool cloak he had walked in, and he moved to a town 2 valleys over where no one knew him. And he took up his trade again, because a man with a chisel in his hand can find work in any town with 1 bridge and 3 wells. He remarried 4 years later. Her name was Idra. She was a widow with steady hands. She knew when she married him that he had walked the bone road. She did not ask him about it. She did not ask him about Mara. He was grateful for both. They had a son. The son grew tall. The son took up the chisel. I met Helen in the autumn of his 63rd year. He was sitting on the bench outside his house with his hands open at his sides, the way a man sits when his hands have done their work for the day and he is letting them rest. His wife was inside. His son had gone to the city. The light was the kind of light a weaver would have trusted. He told me the story himself. I have told it to you the way he told it to me, which is the way a man tells a thing he has told to himself 10,000 times in the dark. At the end of the telling, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Every quiet evening, I still hear footsteps behind me. I know what they are. I know the road is making the sound of what I lost, because the road knew that was the only sound that would keep me walking. And the road is not finished with me. I know all of this." He said, "I still turn." I asked him why. He said, "Because there is a chance, every time, that this is the time she is there." I asked him if he believed there was a chance. He said, "No, I do not believe it. I have not believed it for 30 years. But not believing it is not the same as not turning." He looked at me, and he smiled the smile of a man who has understood a thing late, and he said, "The road told the older me the rule. The older me told the rule to the younger me. Neither of us could keep it. I think the rule was never a thing a man could keep. I think the rule was the road's joke. I think the road wanted me to walk 11 days back through the cold, alone, knowing she had been there for 9 of them, and not there for any of them, so that I would carry the turning with me for the rest of my life. The road did not want her back from me. The road wanted me back from her." He died 2 winters after I sat with him on the bench. His wife wrote to me. She said he had been well that morning. She said he had been sitting at the window. She said he had said, "Idra, the south window." And she had asked him what he meant, and he had not been able to say. And an hour later he was gone. I do not know what he meant. I do not know what Mara meant. I think it was the same thing. I think there is a window in a room neither of them ever stood in together, and the light there is the kind a weaver would trust. And Mara is at her loom, and Halen has come in from the yard, and the chisel is on the bench, and neither of them has walked any road at all. I do not believe this. I have not believed it for a long time. But not believing it is not the same as not turning. I have stood at the end of the Bone Road. I will not tell you how I came to stand there. I will tell you only that the figure on the stone was not me. The figure on the stone is the figure each man finds, and what each man finds is his own to carry. I asked the figure a question. I will not tell you the question. I will tell you that the figure answered, and that the answer was a kindness, and that I have not been the same since. If you walk a quiet evening, and you hear footsteps behind you, and you know there is no one there, and you turn anyway, do not be ashamed. Halen turned. I turn. Every man who has loved a woman the road has taken turns. The road knows this. The road is counting on it. The turning is not the failure. The turning is the love. I am telling you what I saw before I forget. Good night. 13 Roads. Here is a tale I have not yet forgotten. Listen. Tonight it is 9 stones and a song, and 3 travelers who sat down and never stood up, and one who did, I think. There are 13 roads in this country, and one of them is called the Glass Road. It runs through a high pass where the sky leans down so close you can feel it on the back of your neck, and the ground underfoot is half black glass, the kind the mountain coughs up when it is angry. The road is cold. The road is clear. On a still morning you can hear a man's footstep from a mile behind you, because the glass carries sound the way a bell carries sound, and there is nothing on the road to break it. That is the first thing to know about the Glass Road. It carries sound. The second thing is the stones. There is a stretch, about an hour's walk, maybe a little more, depending on your legs, where 9 standing stones rise from the glass at irregular intervals. They are taller than a man. They are older than the road, older than the kingdom that named the road, older, the people in the high villages will tell you, than the mountain remembers being a mountain. And they sing. I will tell you what the singing is, because the singing is the whole of it. The stones do not sing 9 songs. They sing 1 chord, a long, low, held note, the way 9 voices might hold a note in a chapel, except the chapel is open sky, and the voices are stone, and the chord does not end. It does not breathe, it does not shift. It is simply there, the way the cold is there, the way the glass is there. It has been there as long as the stones. But here is the thing, the chord is not a sound, or it is a sound, but it is not the sound that reaches you. What reaches you is your own voice. The chord becomes your voice in your ear, telling you the thing you most want to be true. Each traveler hears something different. The stones do not choose. The stones sing the chord, and the chord finds the shape of the listener, and the listener hears himself say the thing he has been trying to say to himself for years and could not. And the listener stops walking. He sits down beside the nearest stone to listen better. He smiles often. He closes his eyes sometimes. He does not get up. There are skeletons around the stones. I have seen them. They sit in rings, 3 at the foot of one stone, 2 at the foot of another, 1 alone at the 9th. They sit upright. Their backs are against the stone. Some of them are mummified by the cold and the dry, and the faces of those ones are still there, and the faces are smiling. They did not die of starvation. They did not die of cold. The High village people have a word for what they died of, and the word in their tongue means staying. They died of staying. I'm going to tell you about 3 of them. I did not gather these stories by sitting beside the stones. I would not be telling them if I had. I gathered them from travelers who walked past and saw the sitters and remembered. The first was a woman. Her name was Ilse. She was 34 years old when she walked the glass road, and she was walking it because her husband had been dead for 2 years, and she had decided that she would walk to the shrine at the far end of the pass, and she would leave at the shrine the small wooden ring he had carved her in the first year of their marriage, and she would walk home and begin to live again. That was the plan. She told the warden at the foot of the road. The warden remembered her. She had cried while she had said it, and she had laughed at herself for crying, and she had said, "I am ready. I am ready to put it down." She was not ready. A trader passed her on the second day, in the stretch where the stones are. He saw her sitting against the 3rd stone, with her knees drawn up under her chin, and her head tilted slightly to one side, the way a woman tilts her head when she is listening to a man she loves. The trader called to her. She did not answer. The trader walked closer. He saw her face. She was smiling. Her eyes were closed. Her lips were moving very slightly, the way lips move when they are answering someone. The trader called her name. She did not hear him. The trader knelt and shook her shoulder. She opened her eyes. She looked at him kindly, the way you look at a child who is interrupted, and she said, and the trader has told this story many times, and he tells it the same way each time. She said, "Please, he is telling me he didn't die. He is telling me I imagined it. Please, I have to listen." And she closed her eyes again. The trader was not a brave man. He was a trader. He stood up. He walked on. He told himself he would send someone back from the shrine. He did send someone back. It took 4 days. When the men came, Ilse was still sitting against the stone, her knees drawn up, her head tilted, her eyes closed. She was smiling. She had been dead, the men thought, for perhaps a day. They could not be sure. The cold up there does strange things. The wooden ring was still in her hand. The second was a young man. His name was Pell. He was 22. He was a scholar, the kind of scholar who has read every book in his small town's small library twice, and who has decided, against the wishes of his father, to walk to the great library at the city beyond the pass, and to apprentice himself there, and to write, eventually, a book of his own. His father had not approved. His father had been a hard man, a tanner, with a tanner's hands and a tanner's economy of speech. And his father had told him, the morning he left, that walking to a city to read books was the work of a fool, and that he, the father, expected the son to come home within the year, hungry and humbled and ready to learn a trade. The father had not said he was proud. The father had never, in 22 years, said he was proud. Pell walked the glass road in the spring. A pilgrim party passed him on the morning of the 3rd day. They saw him sitting against the 7th stone, the 7th, the one that stands a little apart from the others, with his pack open beside him and a book open on his knees, and his finger pressed to a line on the page, as if he had been about to read it aloud and had been interrupted. He was not reading. His eyes were closed. He was smiling. The pilgrim leader, who was an old woman who had walked many roads, knelt beside him and put her hand on his cheek. He opened his eyes. He looked at her with great gentleness. He said, "My father is telling me he is proud. He has never said it before. Please, I'm hearing him say it. Please do not make me get up." The old woman wept. She had walked many roads. She knew what the stones were. She knew that pulling him up would not save him, that the song would only follow, that he would walk back to it within a day. The travelers who were dragged from the stones by force had been known to outrun their rescuers in the night and to be found, in the morning, sitting again. She left him there. She prayed for him. She walked on. He was found 3 years later by a hunter, mummified, smiling, his finger still on the line. The line was a line about fathers and sons. The pilgrim woman had memorized it. She would not tell me which line. The third was a soldier. His name does not matter. He had been a captain in a war that had gone badly, and he had lost 40 men in a single afternoon to an order he had given that had been, in retrospect, the wrong order. He had not been blamed. The court had cleared him. His own men, the ones who had survived, had told him he had done what any captain would have done. He had not believed them. He had walked the glass road 3 years after the war, on his way to a monastery in the high country, where he meant to spend the rest of his life writing the names of his 40 men in a book, 1 name per page, every day, until he died. A courier passed him on the road. He saw the soldier sitting against the 5th stone, his sword across his knees, his head bowed, his lips moving. The courier did not stop. Couriers do not stop. The courier marked the place in his head and rode on and reported it at the next weighhouse, and a party of monks came up from the monastery 6 days later to bring him down. When they reached him, he was still alive. Barely. He looked up at them. He smiled. The smile of a man who has been told at last the thing he could not tell himself. He said, "It is my own voice. It is me, older, wiser. I am telling myself I did not fail them. I am telling myself it was not my fault. Please, I have been waiting all my life to hear it." The monks pulled him up. He fought them. He was weak, and there were 4 of them, and they got him down off the mountain, and they brought him to the monastery, and they fed him, and they kept him. He hanged himself in the 7th week. He left a note. The note said, "The song was a lie, and I knew it was a lie, and I would rather have died believing the lie than live knowing the truth. You should have left me there." 3 travelers. There are more. There are always more. The high village people say the song has been singing for as long as the stones have been standing, and the stones have been standing longer than the language we use to count. I walked past the stones once. I was younger then. I did not know what they were. I had been told there were old stones on the glass road, and that they hummed in the wind, and that travelers sometimes stopped to look at them. That was what I had been told. That was all. I walked into the stretch on a clear morning. The cord came up around me the way water comes up around a man wading into a river, slowly, and then all at once. And then it was inside me, and I was inside it. And it was my own voice. I will not tell you what it said. I have not told anyone. I have walked 12 more years with what it said, and I have not put it down, and I do not think I will. It is mine. The stones gave it to me. It is the only thing the stones have ever given anyone, and I am keeping it, the way a man keeps a wound he is not ready to clean. But I will tell you this. I sat down. I sat down beside the 2nd stone. I sat down for an hour. I do not know how I got up. I have thought about this for 12 years. I have thought about it on every road I have walked since. I do not know how I got up. I remember the cord. I remember my own voice in my ear telling me the thing I most wanted to be true. I remember closing my eyes. I remember smiling. And then I remember walking. I do not remember the decision. Here is what I have come to think. I think the song lied to me that day. I think one of the things it told me was true was not true. I think I was given the gift of a wrong song. A song that was almost right, and almost everything I wanted, and almost convincing. And the almost was enough that I stood up. The almost was the thread I followed out. The other 3 followed their threads in. I have counted the years. 12 now. 12 years of walking with my own voice in the back of my head, telling me a thing that is almost true and not quite. and the not quite is the only reason I am still telling you this. I am still walking because I was given the gift of a wrong song. I have walked the glass road 3 more times since. On each of those walks I have passed the stones. I do not stop. I do not look at them. I sing while I am in the stretch, sing aloud in my own voice, the way a man sings to drown out a voice he does not trust. And I keep walking until the cord is behind me and the cold is only cold again. The skeletons are still there. There are more of them now than there were the first time I walked. The stones do not stop. The cord does not end. I do not know if the song lies to everyone or only to some of us. I do not know if the truth it tells the others is the truth, or if their songs are wrong too. If the woman's husband had not in fact died otherwise, if the scholar's father had in fact been proud, if the soldier had in fact done no wrong. I do not know whether the gift of a wrong song is the worst gift the stones give, or the only kind gift, or both. I know that the 3 of them are dead, and I am not. I know that I sat down for an hour, and they sat down for the rest of their lives. If you ever walk the glass road, and you come into the stretch where the air is too clear and the ground is too bright, and you hear a cord coming up around you the way water comes up around a wading man, do not stop. Do not sit. If the voice in your ear is your own, telling you the thing you most want to be true, listen if you must, but listen walking. Walk through it. Walk out the other side. Take the song with you if you can, and carry it the rest of your life, and never know whether it was true. That is the gift the stones give the lucky. The unlucky get the truth. I am telling you what I saw before I forget. Good night.